The show, this video is called Our Dad's Garage. He's my dad. Yeah! Also my tooth squiggly. Ha!
Well, good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning. Today is January the 23rd, I believe. And we're out in the shop this morning. It's a little bit too cold outside to really do any of my sandblasting that I want to get done. So I'm kind of piddling around this morning. And I'm kind of excited about this. I was actually able to save a piece that I thought was going to be trashed. This is the dust shield between the bumper and the tail pan of the car. And you can see up in that corner right there, I don't know if you can see that, I think you can see that. You can see especially right in here. This was all rusted through. Now this hole's supposed to be there, but that hole's not supposed to be there. This hole's not supposed to be there. This section butts up against the tail pan, doesn't really matter too much, but this section you'll be able to see. And all of this was just kind of cheese holed up like Swiss cheese. From rust, just rust. And then there was a huge section right here that I was able to get. I don't know if you can see this whole section here, how nice and clean that looks. I was able to cut that section out with my grinder and replace that with some steel. You can look at the back side, you can see that. That looks great. And that panel is going to be reusable now because I was able to fill in those holes with the welder. Just kind of taking my time and going through there and spot welding, and then to replace that. And I thought I'd show you what that process is like today. So that's what we're going to do.
All right, let's take a little look at some of the things we're going to need for this project. We are going to need a grinder. This is a little 4-inch grinder, little Makita. I love this little guy. I paid $39 for it probably 10 years ago, and it has served me very well ever since. That is a grinding wheel. You can tell that because of the thickness of it. There are also cutting wheels that you could put on there. They swap out pretty fast, and the cutting wheel is very thin. You should never try to cut with a grinding wheel, and you should never try to grind with a cutting wheel. If you try to grind with that little wheel, that's going to break, and that could end up with something that kind of looks like that, or even worse, when you misuse a cutting wheel, and that can splinter off and go right into your eye, which brings me to the next thing we need. We're going to have to need some eye protection. You're going to need to do things like this. You need some vice grips or make really good clamps to help hold your material. I'm going to use this piece of scrap steel. I just always keep little pieces of steel around. In bulk, you're going to cut some scrap out of some scrap steel. You'll need a pretty good work surface. You're going to do some welding. We got to have a welding helmet. You may need a few other little things around, but for the most part, that's what you're going to need to do this project. And it's pretty easy. We'll get started. All right, so this is actually the section that I cut out, and it was right in that space right there. Okay, what I did was I brought my piece of steel over here, and I just take a little marker and I make some marks on my steel. I want it about yay wide, about to here, about like that, and just get yourself started. And then you can take your grinding wheel and you can cut that little piece, or your cutting wheel. You could take that piece and cut it out so you can get you a piece of scrap. Now, this piece bends over the side and it creates a lip, so you may add a little bit more, so you want to make sure. So I'm probably going to cut something like that right there, and then I'll shape that with my vise just in a minute. All right, safety glasses on. So to recreate this lip right here, you're going to have to bend this at a 90 degrees. And what I did was I came on my new piece and I cut some reliefs in this in 3 places, about as deep as I wanted my break to be. Then we take this over to the vise on the table and we clamp it down and just use a hammer and bend those over. Okay, so basically I've got my basic shape here, and I've got that lip that I wanted to put on there using the vise. So I've got a 90-degree break on the back, so that's really going to stiffen it up. So this was the piece that was there. Then I just took my cutting wheel and I made these cuts, 1, 2 on this side, then cut across this line here, and took this piece completely out. Then you line this piece, your new piece, up where it goes with the lip on the back side. And if you want to, you can make a mark right through here. I just eyeballed it with my grinder. I knew I needed to take some of that off, and I kind of cleaned that up, and I got it shaped right to fit directly into the hole that I made. All right, so let's go through that again. This is what the panel looked like to begin with. I made cuts on 3 sides and removed the piece that was rusted out completely. You can see there now it's missing. And then I took a piece of scrap metal and made my bend. These are the relief cuts that I made. And I shaped it to the hole that I had made on the original panel. You can see there that it fits pretty perfectly. Then it's just a matter of clamping it in place using vice grips, making sure that it all lines up well. You get out your welder, tack weld just a few places. It doesn't take much to hold it in place originally. You don't want to do this in one weld because you will warp your metal. So just a few tacks is all you need to hold it in place, get started. That's kind of what it looks like when it's tacked in. And then you come back between those tacks and you tack again between the tack welds, and you're just filling in weld a little piece at a time, and then you turn it over and do the backside little piece at a time, allowing the metal to cool. And when you finish, you end up with nearly a solid weld all the way across with just tacks on both sides. Then you're going to get your grinder, and you've got to clean that up. You don't want that to look so gnarly. And using your grinder, you go through and you clean up all of those tack welds, and when you're finished, you end up with a panel that looks very usable. And you can see here where I've also gone in and I've ground out all of the places where I had filled holes using my welder as well in the actual face of the metal. And that's really all you have to do. You can use body filter from here in. Okay, so now I've got it painted, and now you can see that that's a very finished looking product, and that looks pretty good all the way around. It looks nice. I'll be able to use that panel again. I'm excited. This panel would probably cost me, with shipping and everything, almost $300 to replace it online. It's ridiculous. So there's another little piece right here that I had to patch in as well. Same exact process, just a little piece right here that I needed to do. And then I wanted to show you this. So this is the piece that goes in front of the radiator, and it is part of the core support, and that end of that was completely rusted off. I used that same scrap metal to rebuild this end to look just like this end, or very similar. You don't see that once it's mounted in there, so it doesn't have to look beautiful, and I can clean it up just a little bit more. But it was completely gone. You can see where the piece used to be before I welded that back in there. It was totally unusable. So I've saved that piece too. So a welder is a fantastic tool to have. People say, are you a good welder? If you can stick 2 pieces of steel together and they stay together, you're a good welder, in my opinion. There are great welders, people that can lay down really clean looking welds. I'm not one of those. So I'm a welder who can weld two pieces of steel together. Welding also is the kind of thing you have to use a lot of patience in, because if you heat steel up too much while you're welding, you'll warp it from the heat changes that go on. And in a panel like this, that's a finished panel that's going to be painted, if you warp it, you're going to have body work to do. You may never get it straight again. You can, but it's a lot of process, and it's just more work to do. So welding takes patience. So in building your tool set, I would recommend this one I got at Tractor Supply, I believe. Brittany brought it for me for my birthday. I think that was a birthday present about 5 or 6 years ago. And they're not terribly expensive, but a great little rolling cart and a welder. For a 110, most people will not need a welder that is a 220 volt welder. That's for much heavier gauge steel. And a welder like that will tack together pretty much any kind of steel you will need for body work or for working on your car. Shy of maybe doing frame work. I'm not sure you're going to get a hot enough weld with that, but I did do some frame work with this one, and it did work. You just have to, take your time and make sure that the welded metal is very clean and it's getting a really good contact, no paint or any debris on it, that kind of thing. So a good welder like that. This is supposed to have a can of argon gas on the back of it. Argon gas cools the weld area as you're welding. I find it to be always on empty when I need it, and I have basically resolved myself to making ugly welds on things like this, because argon gas it's just too hard for me to keep up with. You can use it, and it helps for you not stretching metal, and to lay a much easier bead. It's not necessary, but just thought I'd let you know. Thanks.